We are just so touched by the outpouring of emotion and support that we've seen over the last few days. We also have to thank all of you for just beautiful and bittersweet tributes and coverage. It's been extraordinary, and we thank you for that. A couple of housekeeping things that I wanted to share with you. One is we intend to have a public celebration of Yogi's life at the museum on next Thursday, and so more to follow on that. And also we've been asked about if people wanted to gift in honor of Yogi, and we have mechanisms available at the museum on the website for you to do that as a lasting tribute to this great man. Now we think about Yogi at the museum in three kind of dimensions. One is as an extraordinary athlete, but not just an extraordinary athlete in the physical sense, but an outstanding teammate and an outstanding leader on and off the field. We also think about and honor Yogi and his wit and his wisdom. And he put a lot of stress and emphasis on educating and working with the children in the community. And we try to carry on that passion here at the museum. And thirdly, and probably most importantly to the family and to ourselves, is Yogi the man. A man with high ideals, with character, a patriot who served his country, a man who was very family-oriented and loved children. And these three things, I believe, are what made Yogi so special to all of us, and particularly, as you're going to hear from the family shortly, to the family. So we thank you once again for coming out. You are in Yogi's house here. We're going to make the family available to all of you for interviews and questions. And thank you once again on Yogi and the family and the museum's behalf. Let me ask right now if there's any particular questions you want. Oh yes, I'm going to introduce. I forgot I was going to introduce folks. And so, as I kept referencing the family, we have his children, Tim and Larry and Dale. We also have two of his grandchildren here, Lindsay, who happens to also be a board member of the museum, and then over there in the corner is, and you can see the resemblance, his grandson Larry. And so we love the family. We love Yogi, obviously, and please partake of their questions and obviously their observations. Thank you.
All right, now we're going to
Dale says, I'm out of here.
nobody can't hear us.
Do you want to try it here?
Do you want to stay here and then we can
Okay.
split out if you want, whatever you want to do. And we can pass this one around too.
In that case, can we maybe put the table a little bit?
He was just using it, I think.
Should we use it?
Yeah, please.
So Tim and Dad can show that one and you and I'll show this one.
All right.
Just hold it right, whoever's going to
Yeah, we'll pass it.
talk, hold it right up to the
Dale,
mouth.
let me just ask for your reflections. Of course, so many great tributes, so many great memories, but what are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are that, obviously we know what an icon our dad was. And, he just blended such an amazing, it's hard to even explain, my feelings right now. The love that everybody had for him. He blended had an amazing ability to being humble and confident all at the same time, put it together like no other man in history. And, we're very touched by the outpouring.
Let me ask Lindsay if I can. Going forward for this museum, since you're a board member, how do you transition from having its founder be there in some way? I know I guess his last time was the birthday celebration in the spring, to knowing now that he's passed and you have to just keep the memory alive.
I think that this place was built, even when we built it, we were hoping that it would be here in perpetuity, and we know no one's here for forever, so we did know that at some point he was no longer going to be with us. And I think this place is such a testament to who he was with the programs that we do, teaching kids about teamwork and leadership and respect and treating people with dignity and all of these things. And that is going to happen whether he's here or not. We want people to keep treating people properly forever, not just because, it doesn't stop because Grandpa's gone. And that itself, I mean, I know we've been talking so much about the baseball, and I've actually been really excited to see them bringing up so much of his great baseball stuff, because I think people think of him as these yogiisms all the time, and they forget that he only struck out 12 times in 597 at-bats one year, and that is insane. But the legacy that we really want, Grandpa was, I always say he wasn't just a good man, he was the best man. And going forward, if his legacy, and it comes through in this place, is just that everybody tries a little bit harder to be a little bit nicer to the people around them, and you know, we all can't be as good as Grandpa all the time, and as he said, if things were perfect, they wouldn't be, but if we all just try a little bit harder to be perfect, his legacy is in that effort, and he would be happy that we were making the effort, and here we're gonna keep making the effort to make kids better people, and that's what we're gonna do.
You did a yogiism, I guess, there. How about some of the stories that, you know, we don't know? We know about the baseball, we know about the yogiism, but what can you tell us being in the household every day that you can share with us that will be able to make the fondest of memories?
I mean, there's so many, and he says them all the time, and I will say that my uncles here and my father are every bit as guilty of yogism as Grandpa Yogi was. All the time, especially this one right here. But he all the time, he would say things like that. He would tell my grandmother that he wanted pasta primavera for dinner, and then complain and yell at her like crazy that there were so many vegetables in it, and that's what pasta primavera is. But he would just do things like that, and he you know, he in his normal conversations with you, they would just come out. It's hard to bring up specific.
Could I ask
but, yeah.
the sons, if I may, what was he like as a father? And I ask this in the context of, you know, from player to manager, the demands of baseball. We hear all the time of high performers in this world not around or having limited time because they're so excellent at their profession. Could you share some insight as to how he dealt with those issues?
Is this on? Can you hear me?
Yep. Use the other one. Use the other one. Turn that one off.
Hello? I guess being the oldest, even living with him, he separated, like I've heard on the television, he separated baseball from family life. I don't even, it took us, I mean, don't even remember him playing till about 1957. Even though he took Timmy and I to games when we were 5, 6 years old, we just went with Dad to work. And we didn't but growing up, and as I got older, all he wanted to do when he came home, he goes, "Are you going to be home tonight? I want to watch Seinfeld." And never talked about baseball. He just wanted to know what I was doing. Unfortunately, I was separated when I was older, and I lived in the house with him for 14 years, and I couldn't leave. And I tried to leave the house many times, but my mother would go, "Your father would be devastated. He doesn't have anybody to watch TV with or talk about or go get his newspapers." And I would go, "Mom, I can't live in the house. I'm 56 years old." But they tried. At that time, when he was able to travel, I watched the house. I did this. I took care of that. And I appreciate. So I said, "Wow, this is really something." But I would ask him. I can remember when I was 15 years old. I go, "Dad, I need $5. I have a nice date tonight." He goes, "Too bad. Go get a job." So I asked my mother I got the money from my mother. But I also had a time when I was playing bowling in the Cape Cod League. I called him up on the phone. I said, "Dad, I got a problem. I need tires." He says, "Do you have the credit card?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Use that." I said, "Okay." And I came home 2 months later. In my bedroom, I come out of the shower, I'm drying off, he's in my bedroom at my desk. And I go, "What are you doing?" He goes, "You owe me $120. And he took my money, left me with a $10 bill and $74 in change. So he was just growing up as a father. And you talk about being away, they used to, it was set plan. They were home for 7, away for 7. They were usually off Mondays and Thursdays for their travel times. But we would always go to dinner Monday night when he was home. We put Tuesday or Saturday, we would go to the game with him. Sunday doubleheaders, we went every Sunday. And during the winter, they very rarely traveled. He did not want to be away from us. He was a family man. He never saw us play a baseball game in our lives. He saw us play every football game, soccer game, basketball game, every other sport you talk about, he saw. He only saw me play probably 8 or 9 games, and fortunately, I hit 6 home runs in those 9 games. So I felt pretty good. But he was just a natural family man. In baseball, you could talk to him about it, but it was on the back burner.
Tim, would you?
I don't know about a lot of stories like that, like Larry. I mean, I could just tell you, as a man, what he was like. He was, and it's always, again, like Dale said before, it's very difficult to explain what kind of person my dad was, because he had such an effect on everyone that he was around. I don't know if a lot of you doing very well, but he could say something and it would last on him. You would feel like you were comfortable with him, that you could laugh with him, that you could get mad at him maybe, you could do whatever you wanted to do. But Dad had this great way of relating to you. As a father, he was, to me, he was, I wasn't naive. I knew he was this iconic, great player, but that's not the way I saw him as a father. I saw him as Dad. He was, he was a buddy of mine. We did things together. We laughed. He supported me. Watched everything I did. He went to all my football games. We played together, we worked together. My God, I worked with we had family business since I was 30 years old. We worked together. And so we were close. And he was that kind of person that he wasn't a terribly emotional guy. He wasn't, he didn't have this outcry, of emotion at all. But he rubbed off on me. I wanted to be like him. He was just a sensitive guy. You can see that. But to describe it is just so difficult. I wanted to get this air of confidence, an air of friendliness, niceness that you can't describe. It's really hard. As a son, I wanted to be like him. I admired everything he did. I thought he was, he was like every other father. He was stubborn. He could get angry. He could do all sorts of, but he was Dad. That's the way I looked at it. That's the most important thing I'll take away from him. He was just Pop. And that's the way I looked at it. And that's the way I think he wanted us to see everybody else. As we weren't special. We weren't this. We weren't that. We were just the family, and we blended in. And the reason we blended in was because of him. Simple as that. He just wanted to be like Dad. Dad talked to the baker, the garbage man, the CEO, the same thing. Dad was just what you saw was what you got. And that rubbed off on me. I don't even know if it was intentional or unintentional. He didn't try to make us, be this way or that way. It just happened. It's just the way he was. You could really just aspire to be that way. And that's why he's unique. That's why he's Yogi. And that's why I think all you people love him. And that's why the media has been there for him all. It's just a great love affair. He's been a wonderful guy and people that he rubbed off on. And the media, he has all you people to thank, and his family. It's just fabulous great man, I'll miss him. I mean, this is for all those reasons.
I just want to say one thing. I think the only change that ever came, that we really ever saw in my father, and it's just a little one, until he was 60 years old, he was just a plain man, my dad. He would draw, I mean, he could have had anything he wanted. He drove Corvairs. He drove Ford Escorts, Ford Pintos, or what, and he would sit there, and when we did the commercial for the jockey underwear, we were trying to get him, he wore white. I mean, then after we did the commercial, we pushed him and pushed him. You couldn't get him to wear white. He would wear black, blue, green, and orange. And when he was 60th birthday, my mother brought him a Jaguar. And he goes, I don't want it. And she goes, it's about time you change those. We gotta get you. Yeah, you have a nice car, because my mother would drive Mercury Cougars and Le Mans and everything else, and I can remember even, I hate to refer back to my guy, because I would walk in, I got a date tonight. Can I borrow your car, Mom? And he would go, why don't you use mine? I go, I'm not going out in a Ford Escort. So, trying to make an impression here. But that was, I think, when he had the big change, he drove a Jaguar, and I'll tell you one quick story. He told me it, I don't know if it's true. He drove to Yankee Stadium, and Reggie and his parking spots were next to each other. And he, at the time, he wasn't even driving a Jaguar yet. He was still driving these little things, and he parked next to Reggie's Rolls Royce. And supposedly they came in at the same time. Dad opened the car and just kiddingly nudged his car. And Reggie got out of the car and said, what are you doing? And he goes, what? He goes, I just take your car. He goes, this is a $100,000 car. He goes, it doesn't bother my car. But I think that was basically the only change. My mother tried to bring him up into the world a little bit, make it a little more impressive. I'll give you one more story real quick. I'm sitting, I could go on forever. But I'm sitting downstairs, it's dinner time, and Mom's all dressed, looks beautiful. My father comes down the stairs. He addressed himself, came down the stairs, and my mother, we go out to see, my mother looks at him and says, where are you going? She goes, we're going out to dinner. We only got to meet the people, the friends. And she goes, not the way you're dressed. And he goes, what's the matter? He goes, at first the tie is terrible, the jacket's wrong, you got to go up and change. She goes, I'm not going to change. He changed. It's just like that. So.
Could you fellows tell us, how did you refer to him? Have you talked, was he dad, was he pop?
Either. A little both. Father, dad, pop, daddy.
When you spoke among yourselves, did you say?
Dad.
Okay, dad.
Pop. Dad.
Pop in there?
No, we never called. Mom was the only one that called him.
Okay. And did she ever call Larry?
No, because my name was Larry. She wouldn't even let me be called Junior. He wanted to make me Lawrence Peter Berra Jr. She goes, nobody's calling Junior. I could be. And when it was Larry, we both answered. So she just started calling me Yogi.
Okay, thank you.
Now, when you played for Yogi with the Yankees, what happened with you, and how did you call him dad, managers? What happened? How did you deal with that?
Well, I remember that my first day in spring training, we had a team meeting, and I raised my hand, and I said, Skip.
Wow.
I had a question I wanted to ask about about the start of practice. So I said, Skip. And before I got the word skip out of my mouth, Ron Guidry got up and said, let me make one thing clear. That man there is not your Skip, he's your dad. And from now on, when you refer to him in front of any of us on this team, he is dad. He is not your Skip. So our relationship was one of father and son, even though he was the manager, for sure.
Huh.
And did you call him dad in the locker room?
Absolutely.
I want to ask, I guess, all you guys, the Medal of Honor that was, that was being considered for him. Where is that now? I mean, that of all the accolades, he's had so many, but that was one that a lot of people were looking forward to.
As far as I know, with the Medal of Freedom, we did get the required signatures, and the White House responded and said they were thinking about it, and unfortunately, as far as I know, they're still thinking about it. The way I'm looking at it is, especially after this unbelievable outpouring of support that we've gotten, and so many people have sent so many messages, and it's very obvious that he touched so many people in so many very profound ways, many people that he never met, that we've never met. I mean, the support has just been tremendous. And I think that as nice as it would have been to get this medal, and I'm hoping maybe down the road he still will get it, you don't need a medal to see the influence that he's had on people all over this area, all over this country, and all over the world. So as nice as it would have been, we know what he meant to us, we know what he's meant to everybody else in this community, and that stands on itself.
Was he aware of the effort, and what was his reaction to you kind of spearheading this?
He definitely was aware at the beginning when we were making the push, and he knew we got all the signatures and whatnot, and then I just kind of stopped talking about it because I didn't know what was going to happen. And
did he have any particular reaction when you first told him?
he just thought it was really cool. He did not understand the online petition in any way, shape, or form. Where do I sign? No, you don't sign. You have to click, and you have to confirm your email address. I got to do what? No, so he didn't understand that part at all. But he did understand that we were all making an effort, and this was something that Dale had thought of. I mean, it was years ago, right, when Musial got his, when you first thought about it?
Yeah.
So we'd been talking about trying to do it for a long time, so he definitely was aware of it. And then, like I said, when I wasn't sure if it was going to happen or not, and we're still not sure, I didn't want to kind of harp on it too much.
Is it bittersweet now, Lindsay, that the effort has happened and now Dad's gone and he won't be around to...
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I obviously was trying really hard to make it happen, and I'm kind of sad that it didn't work out. But again, you don't need a medal to know what he did.
Did he ever say who was his favorite baseball player or who he was most impressed with? Dale, did he ever say it all? Or?
Well, yeah, and his favorite baseball player was Joe Medwick. Yep. So when he was growing up in the hill in St. Louis, I remember he said that he used to sell newspapers on the corner, and Ducky Medwick would give him $1 for a 5-cent newspaper.
That's why he was the favorite?
I don't know. I think he just liked the way Ducky played, and Joe Medwick was his favorite. That's all. That's all.
RBIs.
Yes.
Joe Medwick was big RBIs.
Yeah.
And my father, all he cared about was runs batted in. When he played baseball, it was RBIs. He says home runs, get him in, but sac flies, ground outs, moving guys, RBIs is what he wanted. You can't win without him.
You guys
Wait 1 second about the RBIs. I'm interrupting because Dave literally just showed me something. The Sporting News gave a questionnaire. When was it? Right after he first came up and made his debut?
4 days.
4 days after he made
his
his
debut.
Grandpa passed away 69 years to the day of making his major league debut. He went 2 for 4 and hit a home run in his first at bat. But the Sporting News gave questionnaires to all the new Yankees, and he got one. And it said, "What is your greatest baseball accomplishment?" And he wrote, "I once drove in 23 runs in 2 days." So if my dad is talking about RBIs being most important, that was the thing he was most proud of. Anyway, that just happened, so there you go.
For Tim and Larry, because Dale and Lindsay kind of addressed this already, obviously you knew when your dad passed it'd be a big story in New York, but has the magnitude of the media and reaction surprised you for a guy who hadn't played more than 50 years?
Not really. I mean, we knew it was going to be a major media thing. I believe it has. In my eyes, I think it's gotten bigger than I thought. I mean, when I got up this morning, I went to get the Daily News, and I saw that they had a 24-page pull-out salute to him. I went, oh my God! I said, they do that for a whole World Series of play. Here's a 24-page pull-out for the World Series, and here they are doing this thing on my father. And then the papers, and I just spoke to my cousin in St. Louis, and he said the St. Louis papers are just covered with stories about Dad, the front page, and I just, you know, here like the Empire State Building in pinstripes. I don't think I'd ever heard of that before. And it is just amazing, and I get more emotional from this stuff, because we knew Dad was going to pass. And I sit there and I go, oh my God, this is just incredible.
And a lot of this is because of his persona. It's because he had the incredible ability, innately, to treat the banker's CEO the exact same way he treated the tailor. And he made no distinction between the two. Not only did he not make a distinction mentally, and he didn't know the difference. There was no difference. And I don't know if there's another human being on the planet who did that. Somehow he did that without premeditation. And the fact he was just such a normal, regular guy to the people that he met, it was just, it's the reason why, we're not shocked at it because we knew of his greatness and that he was an icon, but he's just such a regular guy that it is what it is,
Dale, can you talk about the respect that he had among his teammates and fellow coaches and stuff the day that he was fired as Yankee manager? I think it's an amazing story.
Well, I saw Don Baylor talk about it yesterday on ESPN. And after my dad was fired from the Yankees after 16 games in 1985, and I was a player on that team. And in Chicago, we lost a close game, a game that we needed to win. There was whispers about maybe Dad might be relieved of his job and Billy Martin taking over. And we lost a tough game in the 9th inning against the White Sox. And when we went into the clubhouse, we found out that Dad was fired. And I saw garbage cans rolling around the ground that Don Baylor had thrown. And I saw the spread, which was supposed to be our post-game meal, lying on the floor because Don Mattingly had turned the table over. And the guys were so upset that we didn't perform for Dad because none of it was his fault. We had a good team that was supposed to contend, and we were supposed to, we were gonna play well. It was a matter of time. And the players knew it wasn't his fault, but Dad, in an amazing way, after he was fired, didn't get mad. I remember walking into the office and going, Dad, and he's going, what are you worried about? I'm going to play golf tomorrow. And he said, the guy who's taken over for you is like an uncle, Billy Martin. You'll love him. And then he proceeded to go outside and shake every player's hand in the locker room. And then, when it was time to go to the airport, when 99.9 of every manager fired would get into a cab and go to the airport, he asked if he could take a ride on the team bus. And he sat in the manager's seat, and we dropped him off at the United Terminal onto the sidewalk. And we've got a whole team bus full of players who stood up and clapped for him as he walked off the bus. And he stood on the sidewalk with a bag in his hand and waved at the bus as it left. Talk about being humble and humility. That's a story that will never be duplicated.
Were Yogiisms philosophy or Yogiisms just common sense? We make so much of them. What are they? You lived them. I mean, what?
Well, they're very much, they all make sense. The only reason I'm wearing these gloves is because of my hands. That's why you have gloves on, because you have hands. Everything that he said made sense. That's all that says. Perfect sense.
How did you guys, the three of you, view George? Especially after 16 games in 85.
When I first met George Steinbrenner, it was 70, where was he, 70, when did he go back? 76, when he went back with Billy Martin. In an atmosphere like this, outside of the Yankees, he was one of the nicest men I ever met in my life. Charity-wise, he was big into charity. I just happened to, I used to work for a company where I had to travel a lot, and I had to go to Tampa one night, and they called me, I had to make a plane at 9 o'clock I had no hotel, so I happened to call George Steinbrenner's secretary. I said, do you think you could get me a room in his hotel in Tampa? She called me back an hour later and said, you're all set. When I got there, I was in the penthouse suite and had food for 55 people. I was only going to be there for 10 minutes. Sleep, get up, and go. But I was never more amazed at the charity events and talking to him. He was always friendly. But I realized, as a ball player, it would be tough to play for him. And I got to know a lot of people that worked for him, and it was tough. He was a very, very tough boss, so I don't know if I didn't get to know him that way. But as a owner, he took chances, but as a person, one of the nicest guys I ever met in my life.
Dale, please.
George wanted to win. And I know that my dad respected the fact that he wanted to win. And so, when I can't say that I was really mad at him. Through that whole 14 years, I don't think I was really mad at George. I was just, I was more amazed at my dad being able to stay away than being mad at George or being mad at George.
Yeah.
Because the Yankees are my dad's passion. And they're his life outside of family. So you have to realize how difficult it was for him to separate himself from the very team that he was so proud to be a member of for so long.
Did he come close to going to the park when his number was retired with Dickies? That was well before Yogi Berra.
When his number was retired with Bill Dickey, he was manager of the Mets. That was in 1972, and I accepted the number. I was standing with Bill Dickey on the field that day. My mother asked me to do it, so I did it. What a thrill that was for me. Yeah, he was in that. They had a little note from him. He was actually out in California.
So that was pre-Steinbrenner.
Yeah, and that's pre-Steinbrenner.
That's right, yeah.
Pre-Steinbrenner. That was when Mike Burke had the team then, I believe.
Okay. And Tim,
What's the question about George?
just what were your...
I wasn't a real ballpark rat like Larry was. He got to know Larry went out there and got to know everybody. But I read about George. I listened to what he said on TV. I talked to my dad every now and then about him. And everything excuse me, go ahead.
And what you read?
I agree with Dale. George was a winner. He liked to win. I happen to like owners like that go out there and put themselves on the line, make moves, spend money. If you're winning, if you want a good team, you got to win. You got to be with the times and try to do what you can do. So I respected him for that. I knew my dad and he had a rift here and there, but yeah, that's what happens with strong personalities. And,
You have to understand that
he was a good man, George.
my dad was just mad. He was mad that he was fired.
I don't think he was even mad. I don't think he was mad. He just was very upset that George didn't have the nerve to come
Didn't
and
fire
sign for
himself.
And my father always told me, I don't know if he told you guys, that if all George had to do was apologize to him himself. I apologize for not firing you myself and sending some other person. That could have been day 3, year 1, year 4. Well, it's all it took. But I know for a fact he had people call us, Tim, me, asking, "Will you come to Old Timers Day for your father? Will you come and do this for your father?" And my father always said, "You guys can go to Yankee Stadium if you want, but you do not go in my name. You're not allowed to go in my name." All he wanted was George to apologize, and it would have been over from day 1, but you got Dad and you got George. You got 2 pretty stubborn guys. So they went at it, and it took Sue Dale and Susan Wallman to get it straightened out. And it finally happened.
Susan approached you, Dale?
I forgot. I literally forgot how that worked. I know me and Susan were talking about all it takes is for George to come out and say, "Sorry."
That's it.
That's it. Not sorry I fired you.
Just
Sorry I didn't do it myself. Okay. It only took George to come out and say, "I'm sorry I didn't fire you," and tell you myself. That's it. He wasn't even mad that he was fired. Like you said, you know what? That happens. You get hired to get fired.
And Clyde King was the guy who told me that, right?
I believe so, yeah.
I just want to say
One of
one
his
thing
best
about
friends.
Yeah, Clyde was one of his best friends. Somebody asked me about this yesterday, and it was so fresh in my mind. They're talking about Grandpa not really even being angry with George about being fired. And I was a kid. In 1985, I was only 7, and I sort of loosely understood what was happening. And I remember I was in the 5th grade, I was 10, and a friend of mine whose parents had tickets to Yankee Stadium asked if I wanted to come to the game with them. And my thought was, I don't know if I'm allowed. And I called Grandpa, and I said, hey, Suzanne's family has tickets. Can I go to the Yankee game? And he's like, well, what do you mean, can you go? And I said, well, I don't know, you don't go. Can I go? And he goes, you don't got no beef with George. And I went to the Yankee game. And that was, he never said anything bad that I remember at all. He was just upset about that situation. But anyway, so I went.
Guys, can you comprehend in today's day and age where athletes and especially superstars are so removed from the general public, and you can't get near them, and they have entourages, and the only way you can get near them is you go to a card show, and they have to sign autographs for like $60, $70, and then the idea that here was one of the greatest players that ever lived and was always around the state of New Jersey on a golf outing, and he's posing for 50-something pictures at walking around the streets of Montclair or Hoboken, and people stop him and pose for pictures, and never once turning down an autograph. And I know you talked about him being just a regular guy, but the idea of today's day and age, somebody of your father's magnitude would not have happened because of the way they're treated now. And can you comprehend just the iconic status that he had in that respect, that he was beloved by everyone? There's not a bad person in the world can say a bad word about Yogi Berra, ever. You know?
Well, in defense of the players of today, my dad grew up in the Depression with immigrant parents, and was lucky to have the clothes on his back. He got a pair of sneakers every year and one pair of jeans, and that's what he got for the year. He had in 8th grade, he had to go to work for the family. He didn't even go to high school because the family needed money. And at 18 years old, he was storming the beaches of Normandy. That'll make you humble, I think. And those beginnings, the times have changed in that regard. That's about it.
Jimmy, anybody else want to talk a little bit about that, about just the iconic status that your father has, and that there's nobody that can say a bad word about him at all? No one.
Yeah.
I mean,
Unique.
It makes him unique. I really, that's a tough one to answer because, I lived with a guy, I never heard anybody say anything. And one little story that comes to mind is, we went to Longhorn Steakhouse for my daughter's birthday, and we always he liked Longhorn Steakhouse for some reason. and we used to put him in the corner, and there was a whole bunch of us, and some man wanted to just take a picture with him, and we couldn't get him. We said, not now, maybe come back later and stuff like that. And he walked away, and my father just, he looked at the person I was with and said, see if you can get that guy. So, I want to take a picture with him. And the man had left, and he was so upset. He said, that guy's going to think I'm a bum now. And I'm sitting there, that's amazing. Yeah. And he just never wanted to make anybody upset.
Did you guys talk about, we're right not far away from where you grew up in Montclair. You talked about Yogi Berra living there and you guys growing up there. How was he treated? How was the neighbors and stuff?
Oh, the neighborhood was terrific. I think we took more of a beating than my father did, because I would go to my first week in school. Everybody's Yogi Berra's kid. You have to think he's a great athlete and everything like this, and you had to try and prove. And we kept moving around. Montclair, we finally settled it. We lived in Whitcliffe Lake, Saddle River. I got to fly. He got lucky. He was young, and he grew up to this. So I'm moving around trying to. I make friends and I lose them, and friends, and then when I started to compete against other schools, the best way to, fortunately, I was halfway decent and I could tell them, shut people up. I could do what I was supposed to do. You know, and my big thing was playing baseball. And you'd sit there, and I actually had one guy tell me one day, come up and says, I'm going to strike you out the next time you come up. And I said, well, that's your job. My job is to hit you. And I hit a home run off of him. And I stepped on the home plate and said, you can pitch to me all you want. Dude, I like it. But Dad in Montclair fit in right away. He had no problem. And that's probably because of Mom, too. Dad was around, but my mother, my mother was our den mother. She was the Cub Scouts. She was drove for the basketball team for the schools. She was involved in everything. Everything. And Dad, you know, naturally, you know, okay, yo, come on, we got to go to the Boy Scout dinner. And he goes, oh, okay. So, but he would go, and everybody loved him. He loved them. Once he was there, he fit right in. There was no problem.
Did you guys talk about it as well?
About us growing up in Montclair.
We need this one.
Is this working?
Yeah, thank you.
No, it's not working.
That's because it's dead, it's got a ring, it's got a
Oh,
ring, it's not turned
Montclair
on.
you're talking about. And
It's not
my
turned
dad
on.
was just a fixture in Montclair. There was, like Larry said, there was nothing, he had friends everywhere, and he was just the most personal guy you could possibly meet. He had, you know, he, again, like I was saying before, he made our lives so much easier. My dad made the normalcy of our growing up so much, and I attribute that all to him, you know, my mom, of course, but again, like I said, I try to emulate my dad just because of the way he was. I try to have people look at me, you know, pretend that I could be, you know, humble as much as I possibly could, just trying to get just be able to emulate my father in that respect, and it just rubbed off on me. Simple as that. I felt like I wasn't different. I felt like I had my friends who didn't look at me differently, and I felt that they, you know, felt the same about my dad. Even though we knew he was an icon, but he was even to my friend, he was Yogi, he was my dad, and they could relate to him. He made everyone comfortable.
Yeah.
Lindsay, what did this place mean to him, the Yogi Berra Museum and Learning Center?
I was still in college, I think, when we first started building it, but I got on the board shortly after that. And he always used to say to people, you know, how excited he was to have this place. I thought you had to be dead to get your own museum. And he really just loved to be here. He loved to hang out here. He loved that it was attached to a ballpark and he could watch. He would sit out there and watch the college team practice. I mean, who does that? He just liked to be around baseball. He would watch the Jackals, he would watch the Montclair State guys. And he loved to come in here and just kind of be around when the school groups and people were coming through here. And, you know, Jim and Nancy from Denville would come in and they'd be out there and Grandpa would come up behind him and start telling him a story about the picture, and you'd see the people's faces just be like, oh my God, this is Yogi, and this is his museum, and he's telling me the stories. And he loved to be here, and he loved to do that to people and kind of be sneaky and show up. He was really proud of it. He was proud of what he was doing for kids and for the community. And you know, Tim and Dale had the LTD offices in here, and he would come in and hang out with them. He would hang out with Joni and Dave in the back, and just it became kind of like his club, his place to be. So he really did love it.
You know, there's got to be a sense of sadness that he's gone, but you know that he's never going to be gone because people love him so much. They're going to talk about him for years and years and years and years, much like, you know, the other people in the past. But can you talk a little bit about that legacy? That there's, you know, Yogi Berra might be dead, but his memory's never going to be dead.
I watched yesterday afternoon that video he made when they tore down Yankee Stadium in 2008, and he said, it's great, y'all should go watch it if you haven't seen it, but I remember him saying, I won't miss this place because it's in here, and I kind of feel like that all day yesterday. Sorry, Dad. I kept thinking, and all these people that were messaging, and so many Yankee fans, and I say this sometimes in jest, but pinstripes really are the ties that bind the Yankee family. The Yankee fans love him so much. He will always be in Yankee Stadium. He will always be here in Montclair. He'll always be in the museum. He's going to be with all of us forever. And right now, today is my grandmother's birthday, so he's up there having a little party with her, so excited that could happen too. But he will be here forever and watching all of us. And, you know, as long as we all keep trying to do the right thing, that spirit will live on. So.
And the Yankee tradition just itself, you know, Babe Ruth is still here, Derek is still here, Maggio's still here, Mantl's still here, and Dad'll still be here. He's just up there with all of them, those guys.
Playing one hell of a ball game.
Yep. Some team now.
Old timers game is not that good.
Arguing with Jackie Robinson.
Still out.
Did he ever acknowledge any possibility that Jackie was safe?
No, no. You couldn't even get the word. People would come up to him. I've seen it happen 1,000 times. He would say, "Mr. Berra, I want to ask you a question about J." He would get the J out, and Grandpa would go, "Ow!" He was out. Like, he would get. And we were here for his 90th birthday, and Rachel Robinson was here. She walked in the door. He didn't say anything except he was out. It was the first thing he said to us. I saw his daughter at the World Series last year, and we did the same thing. Safe out. We have a funny picture of us making the signs. Yeah, no, it's no, never even.
So you're like this, and Sharon's like this?
Yes, there's a picture on Twitter, and you know that whole play. We were at Yankee Stadium a couple weeks ago, and one of the ushers upstairs on suite level went. You know, they always make a point of showing me all the photos. And that was in the 55 series, and in 1956, was it Spalding or Rawlings? I'm going to say it wrong. Spalding came out with the new glove with the hinge on the side, because Grandpa really thought that had he not had to use two hands on the glove to keep the ball in, that the umpire would have seen it better and he would have been called out. So he had Spalding make a whole new glove so he would be able to do the sweep tag so the umpires could see it. And I mean, he was dead convinced and that he was out and was going to make new sporting goods to prove it. So.
Lindsay, aside from that, what were his thoughts on Robinson, or maybe Larry, or
he just, I mean, Jackie, he loved Jackie and all of those guys. Grandpa was just this wonderful human being and was legitimately, and I'm not saying this as like to be lofty or whatever, he was colorblind. He did not see that. If you were a good ball player, if you could add to the team, he did not care if you were black, white, purple, or pinstriped. He'd come in and hit the ball. And he was one of those people who he stood up for Jackie, he made friends with Jackie, they became great friends later in life. He did the same thing for Elston Howard, for Minnie Minoso, for Campanella. You know, he was on the right side of the color line when it was the wrong time to be there. And that's another thing that we teach. Here.
He played against Jackie too. Jackie's Montreal dad was with Newark, so they'd known each other even before he came up.
Okay. Whose decision was it? There's a wonderful large picture next door of him with Hodges has something in his eye. I think it's the 53 World Series. Who found that picture?
I will. I used to work at the Daily News. I knew the archives. And to me, that image of Yogi, seeing that if Gil Hodges was hurt, the foul ball off his face, just to me reflected his humanity. And he was a great friend of Gil's. And Gil, when he got to the Mets, Yogi was already a coach. And Yogi thought, you know, oh, Gil's going to bring in his own staff. You know, that's fine. That's the way baseball works. And Gil said, no, Yogi, you're staying here with me. And that memory is spectacular.
Two things real quick. Number one, can you just, anybody want to talk about it? Lindsay, Dale, talk about how close Dad was to Rizzuto, and especially down the stretch when Rizzuto was in ill health, and Dad went to go see him every single day in the nursing home.
Well, naturally, we grew up with Phil and his family. Phil's my godfather.
Oh, really?
And he used to call himself the worst godfather, because I never gave him a present on his birthday or anything. And I used to tease him. I said, I'll get it, don't worry, I'll get it somehow. But their friendship, I mean, it was just, you know, like he was with everybody else. Phil lived close by. We used to go on vacations together. They were in the bowling alley business together from day one. I mean, it was just an amazing bond. And then when Phil got sick, I believe he would go once a week or twice a week and to watch a movie and play bingo, and he was devastated when Phil finally passed away.
And the second thing is, how great is the book that was written a couple of years ago by Harvey Arden about with Ron Guidry and your dad, and that there's talk now of possibility turning that into a movie, and how great would that be to get to see the, you know, like driving Miss Daisy, driving Yogi.
I don't know what kind of movie that would be. It'd probably be like another comedy. It would have to be a comedy with Ron's act. And I personally don't think Ron would let them do that. Okay? Because as he's always said, all those things are between him and Dad. He's kept them private with himself. And there's another bond that is just incredible. And I tried to tell Ron, I always tell him, and it's a sad thing to say now, I said, I don't care what you do, you're not getting in the will. So, but, and he has become a very close friend of our families, but I really don't think he would, I don't think he would allow that.
Okay.
I mean, that was such a personal relationship.
Was the bowling alley on 46? Right on 46?
Yes, that was on Route 3. Route 3 in Stuyertown, Clifton.
Okay, and what is it now?
It's now like one of those arts and craft stores.
Okay.
But I originally thought I was going to be a professional bowler because I bowled 40 games a day down there. For years I played. It was my first job. I made 25 cents an hour taking bowling balls off the rack. 25 cents. It was like 1961. I was like 12.
And then when he was 15, he made hundreds of dollars beating all the bowlers there.
I had one friend of mine, this is my story, it's not with that. I had one friend of mine that has since passed away. He was my best friend. And he'd pick me up like at 12 at night and say, come on, we're going into New York. I said, it's 12 o'clock. And he'd go, yeah, but first we got to go by the bowling alley. We need some money. So he would bring me down there and I'd find some guys that I'd bowl with. Come on, let's bowl a couple of pots. So I'd win $20 or something. $20 could buy 100 beers back then. So it was a great hangout. And Tim bowled, we all bowled. But I would just hang out there. My father would drop me off at 10 in the morning, going to the ballpark. And he would stop back after the game, which was usually like 4:30, and the people that worked for him would go, we'll bring Larry home tonight, he's got to go with us. We're going into like Jersey City to bowl tonight, we need Larry to come with us. And he would go, is he going to be safe? And they go, yeah, don't worry, we'll get him home. So,
If we could, two things. When you hit the 9 home runs, was it 6 home runs in 9 games? Was that at high school or at?
a little bit was high school, college, mostly high school and college.
Okay. And did your dad ever share his specific greatest disappointment? I asked him once, and he said, the ball he hit off Padres that Ambrose caught.
I think later on, his worst thing was that he didn't win a World Series as a manager. I think that was his biggest disappointment. There's nothing else that he hasn't done. He won the 2 pennants in both leagues, but not winning a World Series as a manager. Yeah, twice.
I think, I saw recently where, what his thoughts were when Mazeroski's ball went over his head in 1960, and he said, as it went over his head, he could hear the stadium erupting, thinking what an amazing, how excited the crowd was. And all in that 1 second as the ball went over his head, he was thinking to himself how many times he had won in the past, however many years it was since he's been playing a World Series, and that it was okay for someone else to win. And probably the same thing with Sandy Ambrose's ball. Definitely his biggest disappointment is not winning a World Series as a manager, and he took an American League team and a National League team to the 7th game of the World Series.
And did he ever discuss with you the George Stone?
Yeah.
Game 6?
No. He wanted to, he just figured that if they could win that game, he wouldn't have to have him on the 7th game. That's okay.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, if we could, just one or two more questions, and then we'll,
You mentioned your grandmother's birthday. Can you talk about what it meant to share that photo with everyone of your grandparents yesterday?
You know, I just was really sad yesterday, and I was, couldn't stop crying. And, we were at the funeral home yesterday morning, which actually was my Uncle Tim's birthday, and they were a day apart. And the one thing that just kept making me smile all day was that Grandpa had gotten there in time for Grandma's birthday. And that Life magazine photo shoot is something that it's just something that I've always loved. We have a photo from it out in the museum here, and they're kind of hard to find. And someone had actually given me a print of that picture, and it's on the wall of my house. And I just kept thinking about it all day and smiling, knowing that they were together. So that was why I shared it.
Are we going to get some information about services?
the family will be having private services for Yogi, and we're going to have an event next Thursday for the public to participate in here.
Thanks.
You were talking about the bowling alley, and he was involved in a lot of different businesses that people may not realize, because everybody saw him in this image of, oh, there's Yogi Berra, and like, he seemed like, oh, he's doing all these crazy things, and it seemed like that. But he, I guess the dichotomy, and this guy who's very practical, as you mentioned about the tires, and did he ever say to himself, why did he not say, look at this side of me? Why did I not take it seriously that I actually am somebody who is business-minded, serious about things that thinks, and yet, people all see me about as this.
I think Dad was so confident and secure in himself that he didn't care. He was, that was part of his humility, that was part of who he was. He knew that there was some players talking about him being a little bit too easy as manager, or maybe even players who thought when he was with the Mets that, after Gil left, he was a very, very hard man to replace Gil Hodges. When Dad took over, there was some talk from some of the players that they didn't think Dad could replace Gil Hodges. That kind of talk didn't even affect him, didn't bother him, didn't hold ill will, didn't think. If he knew a player that said something bad about him, he'd go right up to him, treat him exactly the same as if that guy said he was great. He didn't care. He was so secure in himself that he didn't worry about or think about, what side people were looking at or thinking about.
He used to tell us, and I know he can say it to Dale too, is you asked him about a manager's job, and he goes, managers are made to be fired. They get fired, they get fired. And like he said, when he was going to play golf, I think he played golf with the day after he played with me. They had the strike, he played golf with you and I. He just went on with his life. And he goes, when he got fired in '85, he played golf, so he could play golf the rest of the year. And then, his friend John McMullen brought him over to the Astros. And he had another 7 great years of doing what he loved the best. Coaching.
Do the four of you, or 3 of you, or any number of you, sometimes just sit around like you're now, without us here, and just share all this?
Me and Timmy did that this morning, very, very much so.
Yeah, probably more now. Usually when we get together, we talk about old TV shows.
We talk about how his uniqueness will never be duplicated by any other human being. That's what we talk about. No one can be like him. He's too unique, too humble, too innate. His whole being had absolutely, what's the word? I forgot the word for it. Not premeditated, whatever. His whole being was, who he was, he didn't have to try. It was him. He didn't have to think. He was gifted.
Authentic is what.
Yeah, authentic. No thinking involved.
What Wes Westrom said, that applies to Yogi. When they made him, they threw away the whole name.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That is perfect.
And we can't even figure it out. Because we have to try and emulate that. And like Timmy says, we want to be like that. But it's very difficult because your mental side sometimes wins out. You know what? I don't really like that guy.
Okay.
Dad, he just...
Hard to explain, God.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, and once again, I want to thank you for the coverage so far. It's been beautiful, and everybody was